In the quiet suburbs outside Mexico City, amid the spring of 2010, a dark mystery was about to grip an entire nation. 4-year-old Paulette Farah, a cheerful little girl with physical and speech disabilities, lived with her affluent family in Huixquilucan, Mexico. Her father, Mauricio Guevara, was a successful businessman, her mother, Lisette Farah, a lawyer. They doted on Paulette and her 7-year-old sister, Lisette, aided by 2 live-in nannies who helped care for Paulette's special needs. By all appearances, they were a picture-perfect family, but beneath the surface, tensions and secrets festered, waiting to erupt. Act 1. Background: a family and a fateful night. Late on March 21, 2010, Mauricio returned home from a weekend trip to a lakeside resort in Valle de Bravo with his 2 daughters. Lisette Farah had not joined them on the trip, a decision that later raised eyebrows, but she greeted them that night, doting over the girls and tucking Paulette into her own little bed as usual. Nothing seemed amiss as the household went to sleep. Paulette's bedroom, painted in soft colors and filled with plush toys, became the last place she was seen alive. In the stillness of that night, however, something unfathomable happened. By morning, Paulette was gone. When Nanny Erica opened Paulette's door on March 22nd to wake her for school, the bed was empty. The child had vanished without a trace. Panic set in. Lisette and the nannies tore through the apartment, searching every closet, every corner, under beds, behind furniture. No sign of the little girl. Mauricio was notified at once. Disbelief turned to dread as he realized his daughter was truly missing. They quickly contacted building security and the police. There were no signs of forced entry or kidnapping. The apartment locks were intact, windows sealed. Security cameras showed nothing unusual, and Paulette, due to her motor and language impairment, could not have left on her own. It was as if she had evaporated in the night. Within hours, the family launched a frantic search campaign. Missing posters with Paulette's big-eyed smile were plastered across Mexico City. They took to television and social media, pleading for her return. That very evening, Lisette Farah appeared on TV, her voice trembling as she begged any potential abductor to bring Paulette back. Strangely, she did not shed tears on camera. Her demeanor was anxious, even awkward, but dry-eyed.
"Return my daughter to me. Leave her somewhere safe. There will be no consequences,"
she promised, holding up Paulette's photograph for the nation to see. Meanwhile, Mauricio gave his own televised appeal. He recounted how he'd kissed Paulette goodnight after their trip and left early for work the next morning, only to later learn she was gone. He looked perplexed and haunted. Mexico, a country accustomed to nightly news of violence, now fixated on the fate of one missing child. The case exploded on social networks, and soon huge billboards hung over highways with Paulette's face and the word desaparecida, missing. TV and radio programs gave hourly updates. An entire nation held its breath. The public search for the 4-year-old dominated headlines for days. Despite the massive search, days passed with no breakthrough. Investigators scoured the apartment with sniffer dogs and forensic teams, but reportedly found nothing. Volunteers canvassed neighborhoods, while police set up roadblocks. Still, no trace of Paulette. As hope of a simple resolution faded, suspicion crept in. How could a child vanish from her own bed in a secure building, without anyone noticing? Whispers began, that perhaps the family knew more than they let on. By March 29, 1 week in, the case took a dramatic turn. Alberto Bazbaz, the Attorney General of the state of Mexico, announced that Paulette's parents and nannies were being placed under house arrest due to falsehoods and inconsistencies in their statements. He noted that each of them had lied at some point during questioning, hindering the investigation. This was astonishing. The very people begging for Paulette's return on TV were now persons of interest. What were they hiding? Bazbaz's move confirmed the public's worst suspicions that something about the family's story didn't add up. Mauricio, Lisette, and the 2 nannies were confined to a hotel under police guard, while authorities tried to untangle the knots of their accounts. In a press conference, Bazbaz himself, grim and tight-lipped, declared Paulette's disappearance without question a homicide, even as he paradoxically allowed that she might have died accidentally. The conflicting signals only deepen the mystery. Act 2. The Crime, Discovery and Darkness. At this point, millions followed every new development in what the media simply dubbed El Caso Paulette. Talk shows dissected the parents' TV interviews frame by frame, noting how Lisette sometimes seemed oddly composed or rehearsed. Rumors swirled about marital troubles and infidelity. Indeed, it emerged that Lisette had vacationed in Los Cabos with a friend and her gym instructor just days before Paulette vanished, while Mauricio took the girls to Valle de Bravo. The subtext of a faltering marriage and secrets outside the home only fueled public imagination. Still, no one knew what crime, if any, had occurred, until the unthinkable happened. In the pre-dawn hours of March 31st, investigators returned once more to the family's apartment, now a locked crime scene, to reconstruct the events of Paulette's disappearance. At around 2 a.m., in the darkness of Paulette's bedroom, the forensic team began yet another methodical search. They filmed their process, commentary and all. What they captured would soon shock the nation. On camera, the forensic experts slide off Paulette's pink duvet. One remarks on a stain on the bedding. Suddenly, he says aloud,
"She was severely beaten."
Another lifts the mattress. And there, wedged at the foot of the bed between the mattress and frame, wrapped in sheets, lies the small body of Paulette. Lifeless, decomposing, hidden in the very bed where her mother had sat giving interviews days earlier. The room fills with a sickly odor. Only now, 9 days later, has the smell of putrefaction become unmistakable. The investigators stand grimly, their faces caught in the eerie green tint of the night vision camera. Strangely, none of them gasp or exclaim in surprise. The video shows them speaking in monotonous, almost scripted voices. They carefully pull aside the remaining blankets to reveal Paulette's tiny form. She is wearing blue and red pajama pants with reindeer prints, her body curled in the fetal position, partially obscured by the bed's wooden footboard. 2 large bloodstains are visible on the mattress, one reportedly
The size of an adult's head.
The nation watched this footage in horror as it looped on news broadcasts. How, people cried, could this be the end of the search? Paulette found dead in her own room, in a spot so seemingly obvious. Officials moved quickly now to control the narrative. Bazbaz, the Attorney General, hastily convened a press conference. He announced that forensic evidence proved Paulette's death was an accident. The coroner found no signs of physical violence or abuse on the body, despite that investigator's severely beaten remark, which was later refuted and dismissed as a misstatement. The autopsy indicated Paulette had died of mechanical asphyxia due to obstruction of her nasal cavities and thorax-abdominal compression, consistent with suffocating in a tight space. In simpler terms, authorities said Paulette accidentally smothered during the night, presumably having wriggled into the gap at the foot of her bed and unable to breathe. The time of death was estimated to be around the very night she vanished. Notably, the medical examiners stated her body had not been moved from the moment of death until its discovery. This detail was meant to quash speculation that the corpse had been hidden elsewhere and later placed in the bed. Furthermore, toxicology tests found no drugs or sedatives in her system. It was Bazbaz concluded,
a tragic accident.
A little girl who suffocated in her own bed, missed by searchers due to human error. The public reaction was furious. Outrage and disbelief exploded across Mexico. This was not the resolution people expected from what had initially been treated as a potential murder or kidnapping. How could the dozens of police, experts, and even trained dogs that inspected the home have failed to find a child's corpse lying inside her bed for 9 days? The case that had riveted the nation became a lightning rod for anger at authorities. Bazbaz, once confident, was now lambasted for incompetence, or worse. Calls for his resignation mounted. To many, his explanation sounded like a cover-up.
We didn't fully search the bed,
he admitted, almost sheepishly, acknowledging that such an oversight was inexcusable. The reputation of Mexico's justice system, already beleaguered, took another blow as people saw this investigation as either grossly inept or willfully manipulated. On April 4, 2010, just days after Paulette's body was found, a judge lifted the house arrest. With no murder charges forthcoming, Paulette's parents and nannies were released from custody. They still weren't allowed to leave the country as a formality, but effectively, they were cleared. Immediately, years of buried marital strife erupted into public view. In separate interviews, mere hours after release, Mauricio and Lisette turned on each other. Lisette accused her husband of trying to pin their daughter's death on her. Mauricio pointedly told reporters,
"The only thing I can say is that, for me, it wasn't an accident."
a thinly veiled implication that Lisette was to blame.
"I won't burn my hands for my wife,"
he said darkly, signaling his deep mistrust. The tragic loss of Paulette had shattered the family from within. 2 days later, at Paulette's funeral, Lisette walked behind the small white coffin alone, none of Mauricio's relatives willing to stand by her. The Guevara side of the family openly alienated Lisette, even preventing her from seeing her surviving elder daughter in the immediate aftermath. This once picture-perfect family had imploded under the weight of grief, suspicion, and anger. Act 3. Investigation and Inconsistencies. A web of doubts. Even as officials closed the case on paper, troubling inconsistencies and unanswered questions kept it alive in the court of public opinion. Like a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that clearly don't fit, every aspect of the Paulette case seemed to invite a darker interpretation. First, consider the initial search. Both nannies, Erica and Martha Casimiro, emphatically stated that Paulette's body was not in that bed during the week-long hunt.
"We looked everywhere. The bathroom, under the bed, the closet,"
one nanny insisted.
You'd notice if something was stuck in the bed, even a misplaced shoe or toy, and we felt nothing.
The other nanny agreed, saying it was impossible that the little girl's corpse lay there all along. Thousands of people, a hyperbole, but indicating many, trooped through that room looking. The bed was made fresh every day, by them, by police, even by visitors, and nobody saw a bundle or anything unusual. Their testimony strongly implied that Paulette's body must have appeared later, not that first day. These women had cared for Paulette like their own. They had no reason to lie at this point, and their bewilderment was evident. Then there was Amanda de la Rosa, Lisette's best friend. In a bizarre decision, police had allowed Amanda to stay in the apartment immediately after the disappearance, ostensibly to support Lisette. Amanda even slept in Paulette's bed for 4 nights during the search. She later recounted making the bed each day she stayed, just as the nannies said, and noticing no corpse, no disturbing signs. Imagine sleeping unwittingly above the very spot where your friend's missing child might lie dead. Amanda was horrified by the thought afterward. It's no surprise that once Paulette's body was found, Amanda herself fell under suspicion. If foul play occurred, who better to plant evidence than someone inside the home? She was taken in for questioning, as was Lisette's gym instructor who had joined that Los Cabos trip. But ultimately, with the official ruling of accident, no charges were filed against anyone, including Amanda. Amanda, feeling the weight of the lies and mysteries, eventually broke ties with Lisette and channeled her doubts into a book titled Donde está Paulette? Where is Paulette? In it, she questioned the many discrepancies between what she personally witnessed and what authorities claimed happened. Publishing that book effectively ended their friendship, suggesting Amanda came to suspect that even her close friend Lisette might not have told her the whole truth. Perhaps the most damning account came from Lilly Téllez, a prominent journalist, now a senator, who had closely covered the case. On March 27th, 5 days into the search when Paulette was still missing, Téllez conducted an eerie on-camera interview with Lisette Farah in Paulette's bedroom. The footage, aired on TV Azteca, showed mother and reporter sitting on Paulette's bed, the same mattress that, unbeknownst to them, allegedly concealed the child's corpse at their feet. They even rearranged the blankets and stuffed animals together to make the scene presentable for TV. Téllez later described that during the 22-minute interview she felt nothing amiss, No strange odors, no odd lumps or stiffness in the mattress. If Paulette had truly been decomposing under them for 5 days, surely a rotting smell would have permeated the room by then. But there was nothing. Téllez has since publicly declared, unequivocally,
I know the body was not there when I did that interview.
after Paulette's body turned up, Téllez spoke out on radio and in print, asserting the corpse must have been planted in the bed sometime after the initial search. She described how, by the time the body was found, it was already in rigor mortis and starting to decompose, literally shoved in to that small gap where it was physically impossible for Paulette to have just fallen and died on her own. Chillingly, Téllez also revealed that she received threats after voicing these suspicions. Anonymous messages warned her to stop talking about the Paulette case. Feeling vulnerable and unsupported by authorities, she backed off for years, only recounting the experience publicly a decade later, when a Netflix drama revived interest in the case. For many, Téllez's story is the closest thing to an objective truth-teller's account. A respected journalist essentially saying the official story is a lie and hinting at a cover-up enforced by intimidation. Now recall the forensic video of the body's discovery. Experts who analyzed it believe it was not a genuine real-time find, but a reenactment filmed for the public. The telltale signs? The forensic team in the video shows no surprise or emotion upon finding Paulette. They narrate their actions in a stiff, scripted manner. One of them bizarrely announced Paulette had been beaten before lifting the sheets to reveal any evidence of that. And indeed, despite that man's words, the final autopsy showed no signs of beating or trauma on Paulette's body. So why was he saying it? It's almost as if an early version of the narrative, one where Paulette might have been murdered, was accidentally spoken aloud, then quickly revised. Such legal procedures, especially filming a body discovery, are usually done in daylight. Yet this happened at 2 a.m. Everything about it felt off. The prevailing theory is that authorities staged the find for the cameras, to have a neat piece of evidence to show the public how and where Paulette was located. If that was staged, what else was? It's not hard to jump one step further, to wonder if the timing of finding the body was orchestrated because the body wasn't there earlier. Bazbaz's critics certainly thought so. The Attorney General's eagerness to immediately declare the video proof of an accident, pointing to the lack of struggle, made skeptics scoff. It looked like a PR move, damage control to shore up a flimsy story. The more one looked, the more contradictions surfaced. Investigators leaked that during questioning, Lisette Farah had been unusually unemotional, even cold. A court-ordered psychological profile labeled her as having a personality disorder, citing her flat affect and detachment amid the crisis. She cracked dark jokes, at one point quipping about UFOs and Harry Potter when discussing her daughter's disappearance, comments many found shockingly inappropriate. This behavioral analysis was used to justify treating Lisette as the prime suspect initially. While being emotionally numb isn't a crime, it certainly influenced public perception. In the media frenzy, Lisette was painted as a heartless mother who might just be capable of harming her child. When photos surfaced of her partying with friends just 2 years after Paulette's death, the public outrage rekindled. How could she celebrate anything after what happened? Perhaps the strangest loose end of all involves Paulette's pajamas. Remember the red and blue reindeer PJs she was wearing when found? Days before that discovery, during one of Lisette's televised room tours, the exact same pajamas, clean and neatly folded, were visible on a shelf. An observant viewer later compiled a viral video comparing the crime scene photos to the footage of Lisette in Paulette's room. It appeared as if the pajamas on Paulette's body and the pajamas in the interview were identical. When the interviewer asked about them, Lisette casually said,
Oh, those pajamas are her sister's.
But were they really? The item remained among Paulette's belongings afterward. It turned out the family had 2 sets of matching pajamas for the girls, something they never clarified to police. To conspiracy theorists, this was smoking gun evidence. Either the body had been redressed after death, or Lisette had slipped up, showing evidence that Paulette was already dead by then, and the pajamas in the closet were the very ones she died in, inexplicably cleaned and placed back. A more innocent explanation is possible. Siblings often have matching outfits, but the failure to mention a duplicate pair to investigators is undeniably odd. It's one more example of how every detail in this case seemed to have a double meaning, inviting suspicion. So what really happened to Paulette Gabarra Farah? Multiple theories emerged, each with its own narrative of guilt. Accident and cover-up. One widely discussed scenario is that Paulette truly did suffocate by accident, but that either Lisette or Mauricio discovered her dead and, in a panic, hid the body. Why hide it? Perhaps to avoid blame for negligence or out of irrational shock. They might have then used their influence or simply capitalized on investigative blunders to have the death ruled accidental. This theory could explain the lack of trauma on the body and the eventual finding, but raises the question, where was Paulette's body kept for those missing days? And who finally decided to place her back in the bed? Maternal foul play. Others suspect Lisette Farah killed her daughter, either intentionally or by accident. For instance, an act of abuse or giving her a sedative overdose to keep her quiet, which went wrong, even though no drugs were found in Paulette's system. Motive, they suggest, might be Lisette's frustration or resentment over Paulette's disabilities, a cruel twist on postpartum depression theory. Indeed, Bazbaz himself initially labeled Lisette the only suspect, and investigators leaked that one popular theory was Lisette saw Paulette as a burden due to her special needs. Lisette has fiercely denied this, insisting she adored Paulette and never thought of her as anything but her beloved child. Still, the image of the cold mother lingers. If Lisette had harmed Paulette, the cover-up might have been aided by her family's wealth or connections, or simply by exploiting the chaos of a botched investigation. Paternal foul play. On the other hand, some pointed to Mauricio Gabarra. There were unsubstantiated whispers that Mauricio had powerful friends who could have helped him orchestrate an accident narrative. Commentators noted that people were straining to find ties between Mauricio and Attorney General Bazbaz, perhaps through business or political networks, that could suggest collusion. Could Mauricio have accidentally killed Paulette, say, backing over her with a car or during play, and then staged the bedroom scene to throw off suspicion? It sounds far-fetched, but in the frenzy of speculation, no theory was off the table. Mauricio's own conduct raised questions. He was relatively quiet during the investigation compared to Lisette's frequent interviews, which some interpreted as careful lawyering or guilt. And remember, it was Mauricio who publicly stated he did not believe it was an accident, possibly a genuine belief, or possibly a deflection strategy to cast blame on Lisette and away from himself. Third-party intruder, a less popular theory, given the lack of evidence for a break-in, but still murmured. Could someone else have entered the apartment that night? Perhaps an employee, a relative, or even the family friend? The building's tight security and no signs of forced entry make this unlikely, and there's no known motive for an outsider. Yet some clung to the idea that maybe a kidnapping was attempted and went wrong, with the perpetrator sneaking back in later to hide the body when the heat was on. Again, there's no evidence for this. It's the most mystical explanation, invoking a phantom abductor. What makes the Paulette case so enduringly baffling is that every theory has holes. Every answer raises new questions. The only certainties we have are Paulette's lifeless body in that bed, and a cascade of official errors that muddied the truth beyond recognition. In the words of one observer, this case became both a whodunit and a who screwed it up story. It was never clear whether we were watching a murder mystery unfold or just a tragic accident compounded by investigative incompetence. Act 4. Aftermath. Haunted by the unseen. After the cameras turned off and the headlines faded, the people at the heart of the Paulette case were left to pick up the pieces of their lives, shattered though they were. Yet, even in aftermath, the controversies did not cease. The Attorney General, Alberto Bazbaz, fell on his sword, at least symbolically, Under intense pressure and ridicule, Bazbaz resigned in May 2010, barely a month after declaring the case closed. In his resignation statement, he admitted that the public had lost confidence in his agency due to its handling of Paulette's death. Indeed, the accident finding was widely mocked. Bazbaz's own political future seemed bleak. However, in a plot twist worthy of a telenovela, Bazbaz's career was far from over. Years later, he quietly re-emerged in powerful government roles, appointed by then-President Enrique Peña Nieto to head Mexico's Financial Intelligence Unit, and later the National Intelligence Center. To skeptics, this was proof that the establishment protects its own. Paulette's case be damned. Bazbaz moved on, but the stain of the Paulette case follows him. He will forever be the man who couldn't find a little girl lying under her own bed. Lisette Farah and Mauricio Guevara officially divorced in 2014, ending what remained of their tumultuous marriage. Their split had truly begun the moment Paulette was found, with mutual accusations of horrendous things, so the legal divorce was just a formality. The battle everyone anticipated was over the custody of their older daughter, little Lisette. In a bitter court fight that played out in the media, Lisette Farah ultimately won sole custody of the girl in May 2010. Mauricio's family had tried to keep the child, even refusing Lisette access initially. Lisette accused Mauricio of being an unfit father. Mauricio's side insinuated Lisette could be a murderer. Imagine the trauma for a child who had lost her sister and now was a pawn in her parents' war. By court order, Lisette retained her daughter, and shortly after, she largely vanished from public view. She tried at one point to sue the authorities and even the governor of the state for moral damages, claiming the investigation ruined her life and reputation. The case went nowhere. Judges threw it out, and higher courts denied her appeals. The consensus was that while she may have been maligned, there was no proof of bad faith by investigators, just a lot of incompetence. Failing to get legal redemption, Lisette receded into the shadows. She has no active social media and makes no public appearances. For many, she remains a reviled figure, the mother who cried without tears, forever under a cloud of suspicion, even though legally innocent. One can only wonder what it's like for her to live with those whispers and with the knowledge of whatever truly happened that night. Mauricio Guevara, for his part, kept a lower profile after the custody loss. He focused on work, real estate ventures, and even a charity building homes for the underprivileged. Perhaps that was his way of honoring Paulette, channeling grief into good. Yet Mauricio would occasionally resurface in media to make pointed comments that he still did not accept the official story of his daughter's death. Over time, however, even he grew quieter. The loss of a child and the ensuing circus had exhausted him. He and Lisette no longer speak except as necessary regarding their surviving daughter, who is being raised privately, hopefully far away from the infamy of her sister's case. The ripple effects touched others too. Amanda de la Rosa, once inseparable from Lisette, became persona non grata to the Farah family after her book came out. The book was controversial. Some applauded her courage for telling her perspective. Others condemned her for cashing in on a tragedy. Amanda claimed her intent was to chronicle the strange experience truthfully, including admissions that she still has doubts about what really happened. Today, Amanda leads a quiet life as an artist and artivist, staying away from the Paulette discussion, a chapter she'd likely prefer to close. And what of Paulette herself? In death, Paulette became almost a symbol, her name synonymous with a haunting mystery. She was laid to rest in April 2010 in the French cemetery in Mexico City. 7 years later, in 2017, her remains were exhumed and cremated. Authorities quietly stated that her remains were no longer needed as evidence, essentially signaling that the case would never be reopened. Whatever secrets Paulette's little body held have now literally been turned to ash. One might find that fact symbolic, as if the truth itself has slipped through our fingers. Yet, Paulette is not forgotten. The case continues to fascinate and disturb Mexico and the world. In 2020, a Netflix miniseries titled Crime Diaries: The Search dramatized the Paulette story, reigniting public discourse. New generations learned of the case through social media, where theories run rampant to this day. Documentaries and podcast episodes revisit it, each trying to piece together the puzzle anew, but always coming away with an uneasy feeling that justice was not, or could not be, served. The Paulette case exposed deep flaws in law enforcement and the media's tendency to sensationalize tragedy. It became a cautionary tale of how not to handle a missing child investigation. But more than anything, it endures because it feels unresolved. A true crime without a clear crime, a death without a satisfying explanation. In the end, we are left with a sorrowful reality. A little girl went to sleep in her warm bed, innocent and safe in her parents' home, and never woke up. How and why that happened remains an enigma that perhaps only Paulette could answer. The final official word is that it was an accident, a freak, terrible accident. But can it really be that simple? After everything, the lies, the bungling, the strange coincidences, many cannot accept that answer. Maybe it's human nature to seek deeper meaning, or maybe there truly is something dark and hidden here. Late at night, when all is quiet, one can almost imagine Paulette's bedroom as it was. The pink sheets undisturbed, her favorite stuffed animals arranged neatly, an empty space where a little girl should be. The truth of that night lies in that emptiness. Was it a tragic accident or a carefully staged deception? We may never know. El Caso Paulette remains a ghost story of modern Mexico, a case that, like a restless spirit, refuses to find peace. And so, we end not with answers, but with a lingering question that echoes in the darkness. What really happened to Paulette Farah? That unanswered question is the most haunting detail of all.